I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Mr. Chairman, we thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General and Head of the Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, Ms. Rosa Otunbayeva, for her assessments of the situation in that country. We listened attentively to the speech of the representative of the civil society, Ms. Hanifa Jarov. We are glad that the regions have also been given the floor in the discussion today. First of all, we would like to express our sincere condolences to the authorities and the people of Afghanistan in connection with the terrible earthquake in Nangarhar province on August 31st, as a result of which more than 2,000 people died and 3,600 were injured in various degrees of severity. The Russian Federation immediately delivered two shipments of humanitarian aid totaling 40 tons, including food, tents, and blankets for earthquake victims. The Russian Federation consistently supports the activities of UNARMY within the framework of the tasks assigned to the mission. We note Kabul's interest in maintaining and developing contacts with the mission. The Russian Federation consistently supports the activities of UNARMY within the framework of the tasks assigned to the mission. We note Kabul's interest in maintaining and developing contacts with the mission. We have taken note of the Secretary General's report on the situation in Afghanistan. We would like to mention the following. Afghans have been living under another Taliban rule for the 5th year. The new authorities received a country that had existed internationally for 2 decades, in conditions of instability and under the control of the foreign troops of the United States, a NATO station there, whose presence ended ingloriously with a hasty withdrawal. However, despite unprecedented unilateral sanctions, terrorist threats, humanitarian and economic crises, Afghanistan has nevertheless withstood. Fortunately, the predictions of our Western colleagues that it was about to collapse did not materialize. Unlike their predecessors, the new authorities did not wait for Western assistance. Relying on regional cooperation, with an emphasis on restoring socio-economic potential and the subsequent independent development of the country, their desire is understandable. They are interested in turning Afghanistan into an independent, free, stable and prosperous state living in peace and cooperation with its neighbors. The new national development strategy of the state also meets this task. However, it is obvious that, given the scale of the threats and problems that have accumulated over the years, the recovery process will take time. The long-suffering people of this country have sustained a non-politicized assistance and support more than ever. This is our common task. Mr. Chairman, we consistently emphasize the need to develop a realistic, comprehensive approach to Afghanistan based on an objective analysis and a balanced assessment of the situation. Its key components remain the same: constructive cooperation between the international community itself on the Afghan issue, taking full account of the needs of the Afghans themselves and rejecting double standards, as well as a patient, non-pressure and blackmail dialogue with the Taliban on all pressing issues. There are no alternatives to this path. We've been talking about this from the very beginning. This approach is shared by all regional players and, first of all, the participants of the Moscow format. This is also confirmed by the regular contacts between Russia, China, Iran, and Pakistan on Afghanistan. The last meeting took place in Dushanbe on September 11th. The same approach, we are told, is at the heart of the UNZONE efforts. The Taliban are also interested in developing such a mutually respectful dialogue with the international community, having joined the working groups on counter-narcotics and private sector issues, organized within the framework of the Doha process in June 2024. It is encouraging that a number of pragmatically minded Western colleagues have already realized the disastrous nature of such a pressure policy and are turning towards the resumption of broad humanitarian assistance and development. Against this background, the futile attempts of individual Western donors to take the Taliban by the throat, talking to them in the language of ultimatums, and at the same time hindering any efforts, including through the United Nations, to build trust in cooperation with them, are deplorable. In addition, the newest policy of politicizing the work of the 1988 and Security Council Sanctions Committee on the Taliban movement and using it for their own narrow interests does not stand up to any criticism. Such actions only hinder the efforts of regional players to solve key problems. We share the Secretary-General's assessment of the difficult domestic political situation in Afghanistan. We are concerned about the continuing security risks caused by the terrorist activity of the ISIL-Khorasan group. We note the efforts made by the Taliban, but we see that these measures, alas, are not enough. The terrorists are consistently strengthening their influence in the country and deliberately rocking the situation, seeking to demonstrate themselves as an alternative force and undermine stability in Afghanistan and the region. The militants themselves confirm the financing of the terrorist group from the outside and the presence of it in their ranks, including those who have gained combat experience in Syria and Iraq. Given the number of weapons left by the Western military in the country, the threat of their falling into the hands of militants and further spreading beyond the region becomes quite real. There are risks of terrorist activity spilling over into Central Asia and beyond. Comprehensive measures are required to combat terrorism and eliminate all terrorist groups, as well as to prevent the use of Afghan territory for military purposes, including against other states. The drug problem is also closely linked to terrorism. The efforts made by the Taliban are still insufficient. Comprehensive international and regional assistance, including through UNODC, remains imperative. Special attention should be paid to the threat of synthetic drug production. The support of Afghan farmers remains significant. One of our absolute priorities is the socio-economic situation in the country. We pay tribute to the efforts made by the United Nations and regional organizations to provide humanitarian assistance to Afghanistan. The dedicated work of all humanitarian agencies, including UNRWA and their staff, who are ready to stay on the ground and help Afghans in any circumstances, deserves high praise, especially against the backdrop of the financial crisis and the reduction in donor assistance and the massive return of Afghan refugees. At the same time, it is regrettable that attempts by humanitarian workers to expand aid beyond basic needs continue to be blocked by a number of Western donors, who categorically reject any possibility of contributing to the country's development, including through the unfreezing of Afghan external assets, as well as the restoration of civilian infrastructure. The construction of roads connecting provinces or cities with agricultural areas. Such a hypocritical approach is not aimed at finding real solutions that can really change the situation in Afghanistan, and it will not help ordinary Afghans, including women, girls and children, about the importance of whose support we are constantly talking about in the Security Council Hall. Russia systematically provides assistance to those in need in Afghanistan. We are consistently expanding bilateral cooperation in the trade and economic sphere, contributing to the development of business dialogue and opportunities, including by involving the authorities in participating in international economic forums organized by our country. Our focus is on the development of the human rights situation for all Afghans, including women and girls, as well as the formation of a truly inclusive government with the participation of all ethnic and political groups in the country. We stress the importance of respecting fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right to education and work, as well as taking into account the needs of all Afghans, including ethnic and religious minorities. We expect to see positive dynamics on both tracks. Mr. Chairman, the Russian Federation fully supports the right and desire of the Afghan people to live in a peaceful and prosperous country free from drugs and terrorism. This is the key to order and stability in the region. However, Building this long-term and sustainable peace is impossible without patient cooperation with the authorities, which would not involve imposing their own vision and priorities on them. At the same time, it is important that we communicate at the end with those Afghans who represent the real authorities in the country and are really responsible for what is happening. An early way out of the current impasse and the subsequent international reintegration of Afghanistan depend on this. Thank you for your attention.
Representative of the Russian Federation.